The second time, and I call the honourable member for Braddon.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I'm more than happy this evening to be able to speak on this bill and to respond to some of the more recent claims by those opposite. Mr Deputy Speaker, who would have thought, if I was to read this quote to you, that it would have come from a very senior member of the former Labor government, when Gareth Evans, the Honourable Gareth Evans, said these exact words: "It is time to change our one-size-fits-all funding system and let diversity develop. Changes to the system will be controversial, but real change is required if Australia is to offer its young people a real choice in education and produce graduates to match the best in the world." The Honourable Gareth Evans. The Speaker, who just left the chamber, spoke in glowing terms of a former Education Minister of a Labor government in John Dawkins. He spoke about him as a groundbreaker and introduced policy changes that were, just magnificent and really set us up in this sector. Well, what's John Dawkins got to say about the current reforms that we are debating tonight? He's saying to his former colleagues, for goodness sake, grow up and get to the table. Have a discussion. We can't go on this way. We need change, and you need to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. Now, anyone that's listening tonight, either through radio or they read the Hansard, they should get a life, probably is the first thing I'd say, but if they are, they would have listened to the last speaker, and you would have them believe that the university sector of Australia, represented of course by Universities Australia, Mr Deputy Speaker, didn't in fact really believe in their heart of hearts that these changes were needed. He sort of went around a little bit and said, look, behind closed doors, they're not happy, they're browbeaten, and they've come out because they really have to, otherwise I think the inference was they might be punished. Well, what an interesting take. Who would have ever thought that a Conservative government could browbeat the universities of this great country? That would be a first since Federation, I would have thought. They're not normally rowing the boat with us. That would be the best way I could put it. But what do we have? We have quotes from the University of Sydney, for example, in their submission. This is not just some misreported article in The Australian or the Age or the Financial Review. This is in their submission to the Senate committee, and they said this: in our view, there have been widely, I repeat, widely exaggerated claims by the opponents of deregulation, ACCA over there, the Labor Party, about degrees costing more than $100,000. In our view, the market will not sustain such exaggerated degree prices. It is vital that we keep tuition rates down. Well, the previous speaker said, well, deregulation will mean that fees will be out of control. They'll just, who would say what they can charge? They'll be able to charge anything they want, was basically what he said. Well, Bunnings can charge anything they want too, for the barbecue that I bought last Friday. But there's a point that comes to play here. I will determine, based on price, where I do business. And if Bunnings want to charge a ludicrous, ridiculous, inflated price for a barbecue, I'll go down the road and buy it from someone else. I mean, it's ridiculous to claim that these reforms will lead to a professional, mature sector, been here for 100+ years, just going crazy and thinking they'll wake up one day and say, oh, let's just triple the price of university. I mean, how ludicrous. I mean, do these people over here actually believe what they read when they get to the dispatch box? Because if they do, I just wonder where this country's going, if it even gives an ounce of thought to giving the Treasury benches back to this ALP, the Australian Labor Party. It's ridiculous. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, I want to refer people to what I thought was a magnificent contribution in this place last week, I think, the last sitting week, from my colleague from Lyons, my Tasmanian second amigo, in Eric Hutchison, the member for Lyons. Everybody should get on his website and have a look at the presentation, the contribution that Mr Hutchison made in this chamber. It was a superb contribution which went to the heart of the issues facing Tasmania. So I don't want to redo that, because I couldn't do that any better than what's already been done, and I do refer people to that. I hear a lot, Mr Deputy Speaker, from those opposite, and we heard it just a few moments ago, the great Whitlam years where free education was available to Australian students. I mean, what planet did this lot come from? I mean, we hear a lot in the context of us trying to build a sustainable health system that they want free health, they want free education. Well, Mr Deputy Speaker, any clown would know there is no such thing as something for free. Someone, somewhere, is paying for it. Now, let me give you a real-life example in relation to these reforms. So what those opposites suggest is that a young man in my electorate, for whatever reason, chose not to go on to tertiary education, and in my electorate 43% of students don't even finish grade 12, and the state government are doing a lot of good positive work in that area, and there's improvement on the go. But lots of families don't even have anyone in their family that have been to university, and there's a cultural change that's needed. But that's another story for another day. But so this young man decides that he wants to go off and do a trade, or in fact maybe his sister might want to do a diploma. But there's no taxpayer help for them, none whatsoever. But he goes off and does his trade and gets an apprenticeship. He starts paying tax from the first pay that he gets. And his taxes, Mr Deputy Speaker, are in fact paying for the education of someone that has taken up the choice to do a university degree. And good luck to them. I'm not suggesting that's a bad thing. But let's just get this into some sort of perspective. There is no such thing as free. Someone, in this case the young tradesman, 17, 18 years of age, earning his first pay packet, some of his tax is going to his next-door neighbour, who will have the privilege of doing a university education, 60% of the fee, by the way, funded by the taxpayer, with that person with the capability of earning over a lifetime $1 million more than the young tradesman. Now let's get some reality into this debate, for goodness sake. You know, I can cope with a little bit of political rhetoric and political point scoring, but we're talking about the future of our young people. We're talking about the education future of our country, and this lot opposite, they don't want to come to the table with any sensible plan to try and build the tertiary education system that we need. I mean, they are holier than thou. Butter doesn't melt in their mouth, Mr Deputy Speaker, when they talk about these reforms. Let's not forget that in the 6 years of the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd government, that lot opposite, at the Treasury benches, took away $6.6 billion from the higher education sector. 3.1 or 3.3, I haven't got it in front of me, billion was taken out in the last year alone, and even now they won't support the very changes that they wanted in the Senate that we have before the Senate. I mean, give us a break, Mr Deputy Speaker. And for those that are reading this or listening to it, I mean, let's just get our feet on the ground and let's get some reality into this debate, and let's make sure that we actually build a system that's sustainable. Now, the other matter I want to talk about, it goes to the whole issue of the scare campaign of the fact that this is building an elite system, that only the rich will make themselves available to this system. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, this is the exact opposite. Going back to my example of the tradie, we are opening up places, 80,000 more places in tertiary education across this country, opening up the door of opportunity for young people in my electorate that haven't had the example of a generation before them leading them to a tertiary education, that as a step towards a degree may in fact choose to do a diploma. And for the first time, the taxpayers of Australia are saying, well, good on you, and good on you as a tradie, and we're going to actually put the same amount of support and effort behind you and taxpayer subsidy behind you as we do for someone that has had the cultural and generational example to go off to university. And why shouldn't that be the case? Talk about elitism. It's not this reform that's elitism, it's the refusal to accept this reform that is elitism, because they want to keep it in the hands of those that I would presume they seek to now demonise on our behalf. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, the other thing I want to say is, in response to the claims by those opposite that our young people will be debt-ridden, they won't be able to get into university, they won't be able to afford it. Can I just say to the Australian people, particularly the people in my electorate, right now, today, if you sign up for an education, tertiary education with a degree at a university around Australia, a government university, that there is no cash to be put on the table to start with in the first place. Not 1 cent. So can we get some truth into this debate? Any young person in this country, from the poorest family to the most wealthy family, have exactly the same door to walk through, and that is the door of government-supported places in the education system. I said this in a previous speech, let me say it again, because most people do not know this fact, and I dare to say, and I know this as I've had them in my office, even educationalists don't understand that right now the Australian taxpayer, the tradie that I talked about, and the sister who went on to be a hairdresser, who pays their taxes, subsidises every university degree taken out in this country by 60%. By 60%. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, we don't hear that. We don't hear that. What is left for the student to pay, only when they earn over $50,000, by the way, is 40%. Is 40%. Now, the bottom line here is everybody has access. Everybody has the same loan scheme, the HEC system, to be able to pay their debt back. They don't have to pay 1 cent back, Mr Deputy Speaker, until they earn over $50,000. What's wrong with that? Most countries in the world would die for this system. We heard the previous speaker talk about other countries, and they have similar HECS fees. Well, there's not too many similar. There's not too many. He talks about the US style. I've got family, direct family in the United States. They would die for this system. They would die for this system, Mr Deputy Speaker, because grandparents have to come on the scene to help pay for their grandchildren's education in the US because it's just unaffordable for the parents. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, the Labor Party can continue on with this hype around, it's going to be an elite system, it's going to cost students more money to get into the system when it doesn't cost them anything at all. The degrees will be $100,000. I mean, Mr Deputy Speaker, Vicky Thompson, the director of the Australian Technology Network, wrote in an article in a headline that said, "Don't be fooled by $100,000 degrees." And if she went on to say this, the university sector is not looking to introduce standard $100,000 degrees, and deregulation won't deliver them. The Australian Catholic University, in their submission to the Senate, says they don't anticipate a general or massive rise in university impositions on students. So again, Mr Deputy Speaker, let's get real. And the fact of the matter is, Mr Deputy Speaker, for Tasmania, let me wrap up with this, I believe that this is all upside for the University of Tasmania. Now, I'm going to put on the record tonight that they've been dancing around a little bit with Senator Lambie over there in the Senate, thinking that they might be able to extract a little bit of extra from the government, and good on them. But I want to say to the University of Tasmania, don't get left behind. There are opportunities. The glass is half full. It is not half empty, and I again refer people to the member for Lyons' speech some weeks ago. We have to take on this issue, otherwise we are going backwards. Do you know, before Labor got its hands on the Treasury benches, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the export or the import, whichever way you want to think about it, of education in this country, in other words, overseas students coming to our country to take out their tertiary education, was the third biggest export item in this country's GDP. Those opposite, under their watch, it went backwards. And I just want to finish with this. Be very careful what the Labor Party wish for. Do you understand that as we lessen our standards, we lose our attractiveness, lose our competitiveness, we will lose those university students from overseas, and right now we don't subsidise them. They pay full tote odd for fees, and those fees actually cross-subsidise the education of our young people. Now, it's all very well, as I said, to take the political potshots, but this is the party that ripped $6.6 billion over there when they last served in this. $6.6 billion, and Mr Deputy Speaker, it is just absolutely unbelievable. They have no shame to think that they hold the higher ground on this debate when in fact they don't. And I say to the people of Australia, reform is necessary and we need to see it passed in the Senate as quickly as possible.
I thank the honourable